Right, Raf, it's very, very easy for people to be critical because it's human nature. But when things go right and you see the way in which people have embraced the surface at Greyville this year, then credit has to be given and credit has to be due. So can you tell us more or less what have you done different this year that has made the surface so much better for racing?
Yes, Andrew, as you rightfully said, last year we had a lot of criticism about our track. We still maintained that the track was obviously not good looking, but it was safe for horse and the rider. This year we were tasked by our racing committee chairman to do things differently. And if you recall, in 2014 when the poly track was introduced, races were split. We used to have 4 on the grass and 4 on the poly. This year what we've decided to do is to have full turf meetings. So on 1st of Jan we had the full turf meeting since the inception of the poly track, giving the turf managers time to get the turf to recover. 3 weeks period, then we raced again on the 22nd of Jan, and then the next meeting was on the 19th of Feb. This is a good growing period. The sun was out, we had good weather, which was kind to us, and the grass reacted very well to this sort of treatment. And we've maintained this process over the champion season, whereby in April when we came back, 3 race meetings was run full on turf, and thereafter the traditional races like the Rising Sun, the July, we run split races.
Now obviously the most important reason for having the poly track is to save meetings when you have these terribly inclement months, particularly October and November, you get a lot of rain, and that's to save the meetings. But it's a different kind of surface. It's not as reliant on nature as the grass is.
Yes, it is. Listen, we believe the poly track is our saving grace for racing. We would have lost 13 race meetings. That's 13 Fridays we would have lost in the last season had it not been for the poly. Yes, we did encounter some issues at the pull-up area, and presently the pull-up is being extended by a further 100 meters. Hopefully this will alleviate the problems that we've encountered previously.
Initially it was thought that the transition between grass and poly was going to be a problem for horses, but I see that this happens all over the world. Wherever you watch racing, there is a smooth transition from one surface to the other, as long as it's not too deep and it can cause the horses injury.
Yes, absolutely. Initially we were reluctant. We thought we're not going to get the support that we got, but the poly track has been embraced by the trainers. We've got a narrow track, we can only run 12, and most race meetings that are staged on the poly, we have eliminations.
Now, when it comes to this particular surface, it's 122 years of racing on this track. It's quite incredible that this track is still the exact same track that Greyville started with.
Yes, it is. Listen, we've been doing numerous soil testing. We've had 3 different companies come and explain to us and do soil testing throughout the entire track to see if there is a variance in the soil. I mean, we had a tunnel put up at that 400 meter mark. So the soil has varied. But we are confident that we do not need to lift up the entire track to get this right. We've now going to be starting what we're going to call a top dressing program, which will be explained in detail by our track managers, which we believe will bring this track back to its natural and good state.
So it must have been very heartwarming for you to come to the end of the season and know that you'd had minimal incidents of catastrophic breakdowns, which happens in racing on any track anywhere in the world, that people were actually singing the praises of Gold Circle for once with this particular track since the separation of the 2 tracks.
Yeah, Andrew, we are very, very pleased with our season. We are thankful that no one got injured or hurt. Horses were safe, and there was a minimal amount of complaints that came through to us.
Now, while we were walking down here, you touched on an interesting subject, and that is Scottsville, because you've only got these 2 tracks to work with now, and we see that there's a lot of manual labor with the ladies planting new kikuyu plugs. You've decided to go another route as far as Scottsville is concerned.
Yes, Scottsville spring treatment, initially we had decided and agreed by the racing committee to do it on 2 stages. Due to the fact that Greyville wasn't available to us in this period. So we decided to do the stand side track from August to September, and thereafter do the inside track from October and November. But looking at the soil and the weather pattern and so on, what we've decided to do this year is to go the one route and close Scottsville from in October and November and do the entire track in one go. Coming back to your point about the kikuyu plugs, yes, I'm investigating the possibility of having the plugs planted by a machine rather than the manual labor. We believe it's going to be cheaper. We believe it's going to be more consistent because the machine will actually plant it in 20 centimeters apart rather than the manual labor, which a person might be deciding to do it differently. Having a machine and having a qualified person plant it, we believe it will help us.
The stampers, for want of a better way to call it, you see them all over the world and you wonder how much of them are actually paying attention to what they're doing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I have to 100% agree with you. During champion season, I personally came down on the track and I was actually going around telling the guy, listen, you've missed a patch here and you missed a patch there. I mean, you won't be able to go to the 800 meter mark and the 400 meter mark at the same time. So we do rely on them. But the track managers do monitor. They have supervisors shadowing these people to make sure that they are doing their function properly.
The cyanodin that we've got here is very slow coming out of winter. We have had a couple of cold days. The kikuyu is bouncing back nicely. We're working on it to get as much kikuyu in the track as we can because it's obviously our preferred grass. There has been talk about the soil around the track, that it's maybe time to relift the track. It would come at a huge cost. I don't believe that's necessary. I'm engaging on a top dressing program every 3 weeks. They put about 5 mils of silica sand, and once that's applied to the grass, we will be using mechanical methods of verti-draining, hollow tining, whatever, to incorporate that sand in our grain medium. It is a process. It might take us 2 years, 3 years. We then should have a nice grain medium without going through a whole reconstruction phase, and it's actually seen in more maintenance sort of procedure. I think just spending someone else's money would be very easy, but I think that's irresponsible, and I'd rather change the way that we manage the track.
The polytrack is a reality. It saved 13 meetings, I'm given to understand, per season. That's a lot of money. How are you enjoying working with this innovative service?
Andrew, yeah, I've had a bit of experience from the older tracks when I started at Summerveld many years back. So before we had the poly track, we had the predecessors. It's a surface that does need a bit of maintenance. It's not just a leave and a prep on a race day. All depends on your weather, what the pre-race meeting on the race day itself. So it is quite high maintenance, although it doesn't require a lot of people. It's basically a two-man team with the tractors and the tractor-drawn implements that do the prep, and then I come behind with the cleg hammer to do my checks that the track falls within the specs as given to us by the manufacturer. And the cleg hammer is used for the poly track. It gives us a good indication of where the track is in terms of its density, its firmness. The racing surface gets packed slightly firmer than the training centres. Obviously, the training centre you need a bit more work and strain put onto the horses to get them fit. Where in the surface racing we want a faster surface. Obviously, good racing.
Okay, speaking to Kevin, his background is golf courses. His background is being a qualified horticulturist. This is new technology. How does one prepare oneself for working with something that is so synthetic, laid on a concrete base?
Andrew, it was quite a tall learning curve because no track is the same throughout the world. Even if it was the one at Summerveld is quite different to here. And the biggest thing for us was to find its critical point. And when I talk about the critical point, it's its temperature. You might have heard in the early days the jocks were complaining about kickback, and we did all sorts of things to try and figure out what it was, and eventually came down to surface temperature. On a hot summer's day, when we race quite often during the day, the temperature, once it gets beyond 30 degrees C, then the surface starts to what I call flour. The wax starts to become a bit more viscous, so it can't hold the material together. And to overcome that, now we water the track. We put water down, it takes the sting out of the surface and it holds the surface together, and that keeps the kickback down. And depending on the weather and how the time of the day, it depends how much water we put down. There's no hard and fast rules with this track, and that's also another thing people need to keep in mind. It's not, we prep at the beginning of the day and that's it for the rest of the day. It'll be warm today, like today's weather conditions. We'll put water down fairly regularly because the sun's out, but by late afternoon or mid-afternoon the clouds could come over. Then you won't have to put water down because the track loses its temperature quite quickly. and then you don't need to put the water down. So it's a surface that you play with throughout the race meeting. It's not just a sit back and watch from start to finish.